Australia just broke ground on something extraordinary. Deep in the red desert of Western Australia, engineers are assembling what will become the largest fertilizer manufacturing plant in the nation's history. We're talking about a $6.4 billion industrial giant that will churn out 2.3 million tons of urea fertilizer every single year. But here's where it gets interesting. This factory is being built on land that holds up to 2 million ancient rock carvings, some dating back 50,000 years. The construction involves moving 2,700-ton steel modules across oceans and up steep hills at walking pace. There are billion-dollar deals with Abu Dhabi sovereign wealth funds, revolutionary chemical processes that slash energy use by 80%, and a tight deadline that has thousands racing against the clock. So stick around as we discover whether Australia can truly manufacture its way out of a national crisis while protecting irreplaceable cultural heritage. In late 2022, something happened that sent shockwaves through Australian agriculture. Incitec Pivot shut down its Gibson Island fertilizer plant in Brisbane, wiping out 15% of the country's domestic urea production in one brutal decision. Farmers across the nation suddenly faced a harsh reality. Australia, a country that exports enough food to feed 90 million people globally, couldn't produce enough fertilizer to feed itself. Every single year, the country now imports 2.4 million tons of urea from overseas suppliers. That's every last kilogram of the nitrogen fertilizer Australian farmers spread across wheat fields, cattle pastures, and vegetable farms. The vulnerability became painfully obvious. When shipping routes get disrupted by geopolitical tensions or global pandemics, fertilizer prices spike and supplies dry up. Farmers find themselves at the mercy of international markets, paying whatever the going rate demands or watching their crops fail. For a nation built on agricultural self-reliance, this dependency stung. So came Vikas Rambal and Perdaman Industries with a proposal that seemed almost reckless in its ambition. They wanted to build a world-class urea manufacturing facility from scratch in one of the most remote locations imaginable. The Burrup Peninsula in Western Australia sits in the Pilbara region, a landscape of scorching red dirt and extreme heat. But Rambal saw what others missed. Right beneath that desert sits the Northwest Shelf gas fields, one of Australia's richest natural gas reserves. In November 2018, Perdaman signed a deal that changed everything. Woodside Energy agreed to supply natural gas for 20 years from their Scarborough project, pumping it through a 550-meter pipeline directly to the plant site. The factory would consume 130 terajoules of natural gas every single day once operational. That's enough energy to power a small city, all dedicated to breaking down methane molecules and recombining them into the nitrogen compounds farmers desperately need. Construction officially kicked off in April 2023 on a 73-hectare site within the Burrup Strategic Industrial Area. The ground was so hard that workers had to crush 2.2 million tons of rock just to create a flat, stable foundation. Two construction giants, Saipem and Clough, joined forces to manage the build. By mid-2025, the project hit 66% completion with thousands of workers on site every day, racing to meet the mid-2027 deadline. But that barren red landscape isn't empty at all. What nobody anticipated was that building a factory in the desert would spark a battle between modern industry and history itself, drawing UNESCO and indigenous elders into a conflict with no easy answers. The Burrup Peninsula holds up to 2 million petroglyphs, ancient carvings made by Aboriginal people over tens of thousands of years. Some of these images date back 50,000 years, making them among the oldest continuous cultural records on Earth. The carvings depict animals long extinct, hunting scenes, and spiritual stories that connect 5 traditional owner groups to this land. The Ngarluma, Yinjibarndi, Yaburara, Mardudhunera, and Wangutitu peoples consider this place sacred. Then in July 2025, right as construction was reaching fever pitch, the Murujuga cultural landscape achieved UNESCO World Heritage status. It became only the second site in Australia recognized exclusively for indigenous cultural heritage. The timing couldn't have been more significant. While diggers and cranes reshaped the peninsula, the international community declared it worthy of protection for all humanity. To prepare the construction site, 3 sacred rock art panels had to be physically moved. Indigenous elders watched as bulldozers carefully extracted stones their ancestors had carved thousands of years before anyone imagined factories or fertilizer. Some elders later spoke publicly about feeling they had no real choice in the matter. The development was approved at state and federal levels, backed by billions in loans and strategic importance declarations. Environmental groups raised another alarm that sent scientists scrambling. The urea plant will emit nitrogen compounds into the air as part of normal operations. When nitrogen mixes with moisture, it forms nitric acid. Researchers warned that this acid could settle on the ancient rocks and slowly dissolve the sandstone, erasing carvings that survived 50,000 years of natural weathering. Some preliminary studies found rocks near existing industrial facilities were already becoming more porous. Perdaman pushed back with monitoring data, showing air quality remained within international standards. They partnered with the Murujuga Aboriginal Corporation and committed to indigenous employment programs. However, the UNESCO listing brought global scrutiny. Australia now faces questions about how it balances industrial development with preserving sites of outstanding universal value. While cultural battles raged over what this factory means for heritage, engineers were solving puzzles of a different kind, turning desert and seawater into a chemical manufacturing powerhouse. The first steel module arrived from Chennai, India, on a cargo ship. Workers at Port Dampier stared up at a 42-meter-tall structure, weighing 985 tons. This single piece stood taller than a 12-story building and contained reactor vessels, piping, and supports for one section of the ammonia plant. It was just one of over 100 modules being fabricated in India and shipped to Australia. Moving these giants from port to construction site became an engineering spectacle. The distance measured only 2.6 kilometers, but the journey took days. Self-propelled modular transporters crawled forward at less than 1.6 kilometers per hour. The road climbed an 8% incline, and the heaviest module weighed 2,700 tons. Engineers calculated every centimeter, ensuring the transporters distributed weight evenly to prevent cracking the road or tipping the load. The ammonia production system uses Syncor technology from Haldor Topsoe. Traditional plants require a steam-to-carbon ratio of 2.5 or higher. The Perdaman plant operates at just 0.6, slashing steam requirements by 80%. This efficiency allows smaller pipes and less energy while still producing 3,500 tons of ammonia every single day. The heart of the system is an autothermal reformer, where natural gas meets oxygen and steam under extreme conditions. The oxygen causes some gas to burn inside the reactor, generating temperatures hot enough to crack methane molecules apart. This creates syngas, a mixture of hydrogen and carbon monoxide. The gas flows through vessels filled with zinc oxide that pulls sulfur out before it can poison expensive catalysts. Shift reactors then convert carbon monoxide into carbon dioxide and more hydrogen. The hydrogen combines with nitrogen under high pressure in the ammonia synthesis loop. This loop is designed to be inert-free, running at lower pressure and saving massive amounts of electricity. Finished ammonia flows into a refrigerated storage tank holding 10,000 tons. The urea plant uses stamicarbon technology to produce 6,200 tons of granulated urea daily. Ammonia and carbon dioxide mix inside a reactor under 160 bars of pressure. The chemicals are so corrosive that the reactor is lined with Safurex, a super duplex stainless steel designed to resist damage for 40 years. Because the site sits near an airport, engineers designed a horizontal pool condenser that reduced the structure's height by 10 meters. Inside the granulation unit, liquid urea transforms into solid beads through fluid bed granulation. Tiny seed particles float in air streams while liquid urea sprays onto them. Each seed grows layer by layer until it becomes a hard, round granule. These beads get coated with UF80 to prevent breaking during shipping. Perdaman signed a $90 million deal for 16,000 tons of this coating annually. The plant generates 101 megawatts of electricity using gas turbines, with 5 megawatts from solar panels. It pumps 25.2 gigaliters of seawater yearly for cooling. Finished fertilizer travels to port on a 3.5-kilometer conveyor belt enclosed in steel tubing to prevent dust from settling on nearby rock art. But building technological marvels requires more than engineering brilliance. It demands billions of dollars and deals cut in boardrooms from Perth to Abu Dhabi. The $6.4 billion price tag tells only part of the financial story. Behind that number sits a complex web of loans, equity investments, offtake agreements, and political backing that took years to assemble. The Northern Australia infrastructure facility provided $220 million for the plant itself, plus $160 million for port upgrades and $95 million for water pipeline infrastructure. Export Finance Australia added another $269 million in loan facilities. 12 commercial lenders joined the consortium, each betting that Perdaman could deliver on its promises. Then came the game changer, Abu Dhabi's Mubadala Investment Company, a sovereign wealth fund managing hundreds of billions in assets, partnered with global infrastructure partners to invest an undisclosed but substantial sum into the project. This wasn't just money. It was a signal that international investors with deep expertise in infrastructure saw Perdaman as a winner. Mubadala's involvement brought credibility, connections, and confidence that helped unlock additional funding. But money alone doesn't guarantee success. Perdaman needed guaranteed buyers for 2.3 million tons of urea every year. Incitec Pivot, the same company that closed the Gibson Island plant, signed a 20-year offtake agreement to purchase the entire output. This arrangement gave lenders the certainty they needed. The fertilizer wouldn't sit in warehouses hoping for buyers. It had a customer locked in for 2 decades. On the supply side, Woodside Energy's commitment to provide 130 terajoules of natural gas daily for 20 years anchored the whole operation. Without guaranteed gas, the plant couldn't run. Without a running plant, loans couldn't be repaid. Woodside's Scarborough Gas Project, one of the largest offshore developments in Australian history, made the Perdaman plant economically viable. Compare this to the failures. Strike Energy attempted Project Haber in Western Australia, but discovered their gas reserves couldn't support commercial-scale production. The project collapsed. New Riser's Lee Creek Urea plant in South Australia announced indefinite delays after losing strategic partners and facing financing challenges. Both projects had ambitions similar to Perdaman, but neither assembled the right combination of gas supply, offtake agreements, and financial backing. Perdaman succeeded where others stumbled because Vikas Rambal played the long game. Planning began years before the 2023 construction start. The company secured state strategic significance status from the Western Australian government, fast-tracking approvals and ensuring political support at the highest levels. Federal backing followed, as the project aligned with national priorities around manufacturing sovereignty and regional development. The political calculation was straightforward. Australia imports 2.4 million tons of urea annually, sending billions of dollars overseas. The Perdaman plant would replace those imports with domestic production, keeping money within Australia and creating jobs in a region that desperately needed economic diversification. Karatha, the nearest town, would gain 200 permanent jobs once the plant reached full operation, plus thousands of construction jobs in the buildup. Critics questioned whether taxpayer-backed loans should support a private company's profit-making venture. Environmental groups argued the government was subsidizing fossil fuel infrastructure at a time when the world needed to transition away from gas. But political leaders countered that food security and manufacturing capability justified the investment. Without domestic fertilizer production, Australian farmers remained vulnerable to global supply disruptions and price shocks. With money flowing and construction racing ahead, the question shifted from whether this factory would be built to what it would mean when those first tons of urea finally rolled off the production line in 2027. As of early 2026, the Perdaman plant sits at 70% completion. Thousands of workers move across the site every day, welding pipes, connecting electrical systems, and testing equipment. The mid-2027 deadline looms over every decision. When that date arrives, the first batches of urea will travel along the enclosed conveyor belt to Port Dampier, where ship loaders will pour 2,200 tons per hour into cargo holds. Between 50 and 100 ships will dock annually to collect fertilizer bound for the Asia-Pacific region, Brazil, and the United States. For Australian farmers, the plant promises price stability they haven't seen in years. No more watching international markets and hoping shipping routes stay open. Domestic production means consistent supply and the leverage to negotiate better prices. The food those farmers produce feeds Australia and exports to feed 90 million people globally. Stable fertilizer supply translates directly into food security, but contradictions run through every aspect of this project. Perdaman talks about reaching net zero emissions by 2050, yet the plant will burn 130 terajoules of natural gas every single day. This is equivalent to burning 2.5 to 3 million liters of petrol energy every day. The company installed 5 megawatts of solar capacity and promises future expansion to 1,000 megawatt hours of solar storage. However, 5 megawatts barely makes a dent in the plant's 101 megawatt power demand. The gap between green rhetoric and fossil fuel reality remains enormous. Environmental monitoring continues around the ancient rock art sites. Air quality sensors track nitrogen compound levels, checking whether emissions stay within safe limits or begin attacking the sandstone. Scientists remain divided. Some argue that modern industrial pollution, even when meeting regulatory standards, causes cumulative damage over decades. Others counter that natural weathering poses a greater threat than controlled emissions from a well-monitored facility. Indigenous communities face their own contradictions. Young people work construction jobs that pay well and provide skills training. Families benefit from contracts awarded to First Nations businesses. Yet cultural custodians watch the landscape transform and wonder what their grandchildren will inherit. Now, does the Perdaman plant represent Australia's manufacturing renaissance or its last gasp of fossil fuel dependency? Politicians celebrate onshoring production and reducing import reliance. Economists point to jobs, tax revenue, and strategic capability. But climate advocates see billions invested in infrastructure that locks in gas consumption for decades when the world needs to transition to renewable energy and circular agriculture. When the first ship leaves Port Dampier in 2027, loaded with Australian-made urea, it will mark the culmination of years of planning, billions in investment, and countless compromises between competing values. Farmers will celebrate supply security. Indigenous communities will mourn and hope in equal measure. Engineers will see validation of their technical achievements. Environmentalists will see another step in the wrong direction. The Perdaman Urea project is all of these things at once. It's a $6.4 billion bet that Australia can manufacture its way to food security while protecting cultural heritage and moving toward environmental sustainability. Whether that bet pays off depends on who you ask and what you value most. So, what's your take on this massive project? Does Australia need this factory to secure its food supply, or should the focus shift to sustainable alternatives? Drop your thoughts in the comments below, and don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe for more deep dives into the world's most ambitious engineering projects. Until next time, stay curious.